It's time for the Skiing Weatherman pattern overview for SnoCountry. I'm Herb Stevens, meteorologist Herb Stevens. Got to look at the things that are going on weather-wise in the West. And finally, we've got something to talk about because I've been speaking endlessly about the domination of an upper-level ridge for much of this winter. But there is some new snow to report, and I think there's a little more on the way for some of the western resorts. And this report, as always, is brought to you by the nice folks at UVEX Sports. We have some snow to talk about today, and if we take a look at the national map and the watches and warnings and advisories that have been posted by the National Weather Service, you can see that in the northern Rockies, if I get my pen fired up here, in the northern Rockies there are winter weather advisories, and that is good news, and we are going to have some appreciable snow falling in parts of Wyoming and the Tetons and the Bighorns and southwestern Montana and across Idaho over the course of the next 24 to 36 hours. And the reason, and by the way, some of that snow is going to make it down to the Wasatch and into the central and northern mountains of Colorado as well. And if we take a look at the jet stream map, we get an explanation and an idea of why this snow is going to happen. First of all, I want you to look at this national map on a broader scope, because you notice there's a shortwave trough there and another one there and another one in the northwest. And what happens at this time of year, as the pools of cold air that drive these troughs start to shrink, because we are getting into springtime, what effectively happens is the wavelength between these systems starts to shorten, the wavelengths, I should say. And that's good news, because we know that over the course of most of this winter, a broad ridge has been dominating the west, but with the wavelength shortening up, there'll be more room for these disturbances to not only come through the ridge, but come over the top of it and start to bring some late snow. Is it better late than never? I don't know. That's up to you. I know that some of the resorts are pretty much at the end of their rope as far as the season's concerned, but those that plan to stay open into April, I think things weather-wise are going to be more optimistic as we go through the next month or so. Now, today's jet stream shows two disturbances, upper-level shortwave troughs, one over eastern Wyoming. This one's the one that is ultimately going to bring some pretty good snow to southwestern Montana. I think you're looking at a foot of new snow there in the next 36 hours. The Tetons are looking at 5 to 10 inches. I think we're going to have something on the order of another 3 to 6 inches or so in the mountains of northern Utah and north central and northern Colorado. You too are looking at maybe 2 to 4 inches, maybe some isolated 6-inch amounts as these systems kind of cycle southeastward like this. In terms of the moisture, if you look at the infrared satellite picture, and it was too early in the morning Western time to get a visible shot because it was still dark out there when I put this together. But you can see with the brightest reflections here, that's where the heaviest or the deepest moisture is, the moisture to the north in that second shortwave. Not quite as deep, but it is precipitating in this part of the country. And the snow levels, unfortunately, are something that's a bit of a struggle, continuing to be a bit of a struggle up here. But, you know, there has been some good news from the northwest. In the last few days, Anthony Lakes in Oregon's picked up a foot of new snow. Bachelor's picked up about 10. And Big Sky, they've had a decent snow year here in southwestern Montana. They've had 4 to 6 inches of new snow. But there's the system that will be peeling southeastward over the next day and a half or so. The radar shows some scattered returns here in Idaho, but the deeper moisture, it would appear, kind of belies what we saw in the infrared picture. But Washington is getting some low elevation rain and high elevation snow, and the flow in off the ocean is also causing some high elevation snow to fall across extreme northern California and into south central Oregon. But again, the snow levels, as has been the case much of this winter, are a bit of a concern, at least today. Now, here's the leading edge of the moisture approaching the Tetons, and it looks as though midday today, Tuesday, is when the snow will break out. There will be snow coming into the Wasatch as well, and this whole system is going to peel down into Colorado, and the snow in Colorado should be falling tonight and on Wednesday. And again, Interstate 70 is pretty good line of demarcation for where the significant snow. It's only several inches, but it will make for some fairly nice skiing and riding coming up on Wednesday, especially in Colorado. Now, let's go ahead to the end of the week. I hate to do this, but taking a look at the forecast for the jet stream level for Saturday, the ridge builds once again, and that means we're going to see a warming trend. It's going to be dry. So if you want the drier snow in the midwinter conditions, you got to grab it in the next couple of days in Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, northern Utah, and Colorado. That's where you'll find the drier surface conditions. Now, over the course of the next 7 days, the GFS model shows that most of the snow is going to fall north east of this basic line that I'm drawing for you here as systems come over the ridge and dive southeastward with a little bit of Pacific moisture and a little bit of Canadian cold air mixing together to produce this snow. It's going to be tough to get any snow down into the mountains of Arizona or New Mexico. I should point out over the last 5 days, Ski Santa Fe down here in north central New Mexico's had 13 inches of snow, so they got a little shot in the arm. The Canadian over the next 7 days has pretty much the same breakdown in terms of the haves and the have-nots. But again, in the northwest, this is going to be highly dependent on elevation with those snow levels up to 6,000 or 7,000 feet. They will be lower as you move into the northern Rockies because a little bit of cold air is bleeding out of the trough that's dominating further east, and that's going to lower the snow levels and make for some dry snow conditions at Grand Targhee and down to Jackson Hole and around Salt Lake City the next couple of days. Could actually call tomorrow a powder day at Targhee and Big Sky and Jackson Hole. So get out there and enjoy it. 7 days from now, we have pretty much the same situation at the jet stream level we've seen much of this winter with an eastern trough. But notice this trough starting to try to barge through the western ridge. And I think the best prospects for a new round of snow in the west will come 7, 8, 9 days from now. If we look at the Canadian ensembles at 10 days, notice they have a trough inland. I basically like this idea. And the eastern trough over the next couple of weeks is going to migrate westward, and that's going to allow for more cold air to get into the Rockies, and eventually this trough is going to set up shop out here after about the 10th or so. And 15 days from now, you can see that the Canadian ensembles like the idea of flattening the western ridge, but I think we're looking after the 10th for more of a western trough and an eastern ridge, something we've seen precious little of this winter, and it's at that time that I think some late snows are going to come to the mountains of the west. Hopefully it's not too late for your favorite resort. So in summary, this week, the new snow will be found in the northern and central mountains of the Rockies and the Wasatch and northward to the northern Cascades. The ridge is going to return for the weekend with higher snow levels and higher temperatures. The next shot at significant snow is a little more than a week from now. I like that idea of Pacific energy coming on shore and penetrating the ridge into the central ranges. And then after the 10th, that's when I think if we're going to have a significant pattern change, and I do think it's coming, that's when it will occur. That's the latest from the Skiing Weatherman and Snow Country, brought to you by UVEX Sports. Enjoy your sliding, folks.